How's it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video, and today, guys, what I bring to you is my Where to Handtrap series for the new format in February 2022. So I really do hope that you enjoy this because there are quite a few different decks that are seeing a lot of play now because of the Brave engine. So I'm not going to be adding in a couple decks in here that we've already seen and that haven't really changed because I don't want to just bring it back up when we've already talked about it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you haven't seen the other episodes, definitely find the playlist on my channel for Where to Handtrap. Go watch all those so you can really be updated on the meta, so you're never really surprised whenever you play against a deck that you don't really know or you're not too familiar with. So today we're going to be focusing on more of the decks that got really altered, and then we're also going to be talking really heavily on the Brave engine because there was already a regional today where even Brave Plunder got top 4 because the Brave engine just does so much. And then at the PPG we saw Brave Phantom Knight win. So we already know this engine is insane. It's really going to change our game. But what if I told you that I found the way to absolutely shut down this engine? It's pretty nuts. So we're going to be talking about that. To start things off, though, today, I understand that not everyone's going to understand or know what the Brave engine does just yet. So let's go ahead and review what they do before we talk about them and how to stop them. So the first thing that I want to bring up here is going to be our Griffin Rider. So Griffin Rider, you can go ahead and quick effect special summon this in the main phase if you control a Brave token or if you control no monsters. So that's really cool too because it's just a free body at that point. But if you do have the Brave token, it turns into a negate. This is what we call an omni negate. If you don't know what that means, think about like omnidirectional, right? It usually means from any direction. So that's basically what we mean by omni negate, is that something that can realistically negate anything except for like spell speed 4, right? Like counter traps or whatnot. So it's a very, very good card, and you can summon it by your second summon. So that means that cards like Nibiru really aren't that big of an issue. For the trade-off, though, you cannot use any normal summoned effects for the turn. So this is something just to kind of keep in the back of your mind, which can be pretty important. That's why you can't run it in every deck, but there are a lot of decks that can benefit from this. The other thing here is going to be our Aquamancer. You can banish this card from your hand or your graveyard to add Rites of Armisia from your deck to your hand, which is going to be this one right here. And then if you control a Brave token, you can go ahead and special summon this for free as well. So when you have the Rites of Armisia, you can go ahead and special summon a token. It's 2,000, very big token. And then once the token is summoned, you can go ahead and activate this, which is the Fateful Adventure, which is really, really strong because when it's activated at any point in time, you can go ahead and use it to go ahead and add any of the Brave monsters from your deck to your hand, and then you have to then go ahead and discard a card afterward. Very good because you can go ahead and add, like, in a simplified game state, let's say you don't really want to lose anything out of your hand, you can use Fateful, you can add the Aquamancer, and then you can discard the Aquamancer, then banish it from your graveyard, and then get another Rites of Armisia. So that's really strong. Really big fan of that. It can also just add this from your deck or grave to your hand, which is pretty strong, so you can keep getting those back and back. And then this thing also, when a monster is special summoned to your field, you can go ahead and add this last piece right here, which is called the Draco Back. Draco Back allows you to equip it to a token, and then you can target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So this is the card that allows you to play through things like Floodgates or annoying cards on the board that you otherwise wouldn't be able to deal with, right? So like this card is absurd. It's really, really strong. So without further ado, let's go right into talking about why the Brave engine is good, why it's bad, and then how to stop it. So with the first thing here that I want to bring up is that it's 9 engine cards. Now that's a lot of cards, okay? That's a lot. So when you're putting this in your deck, you have to realize that you're losing 2 things. You're losing either 9 extenders or you're losing 9 utility cards, or both. And so that's really big. If you think about a deck like Prank Kid that's playing the Brave engine now, they used to play like 15, 18 hand traps because they could. But now they're playing these 9 cards, so they have to alter their deck to be a little different now. So this is where this can be really impactful if you don't already have the amount of utility cards you want to use to stop your opponent. Because if they do have the Brave engine, this is something where it can get really hard to stop them with just one hand trap. But at the same time, when you're adding 9 engine cards, sometimes your opening hands aren't as crazy as they used to be because you don't open like multiple hand traps. You would open like the for sure negate with the Griffin and maybe like your full combo, but the odds that you actually open up utility are a lot lower. So this is kind of the trade-off with the Brave engine. But there is a surefire way to make sure that this engine doesn't go off. So I've been preaching about Ghost Ogre last format, and I didn't end up liking it as much. It was pretty impactful and it had a lot of really cool application, but I didn't love it that much. But now, if they use Griffin Rider effect, it's the same thing as Ghost Ogre chain on Appaloosa. So, because if you're not familiar, like, if Appaloosa were to negate something and you chain Ogre, the Appaloosa has to lose attack for it to negate. So if you blow it up with Ogre, the Appaloosa will not negate what it was trying to negate. But the Griffin Rider has to return to the deck for it to negate. So when they chain Griffin, if you chain Ogre, it not only gets rid of their Griffin for the game, because they have no way to get it back from the graveyard. Typically, in any of these decks, there's just no way to recur it. So it's just gone, which is pretty crazy. And then they just lose the negate. So that's pretty nuts, too. You can hit the Fateful Adventure if you want, which is also just fairly strong, right? So that's totally up to you and what the game state is. But if they already have, like, the Griffin, you can go ahead and just pop the Griffin with Ghost Ogre, and it just won't negate. It's pretty insane. I like that a lot. And that's another way to really just shut down the engine right away for your opponent. And again, that's one of those things that I was saying where, like, they're going to open up more of this engine versus, like, their other utility cards. So their board might not be that big without the Griffin there, right? So that's something to really keep in the back of your mind. It's really, really strong. The other thing is that you can go ahead and bell the Aquamancer, because again, when you banish it, you can add the rights from your deck or grave to your hand, so you can go ahead and bell this thing as well. Just some really good application for hand traps that you may not be aware of. So that's one thing where I think is really good moving forward, especially because E-Telly's at 3. So if you're playing a deck like VW, if you're playing a deck like Brave Phantom Knight, where you're already running E-Telly, you can run Ogre and just win the mirror, because if they don't have the Ogre, you can just stop their Griffin, especially going second, and they either negate the E-Telly and you don't get the Ogre, or you summon the Ogre anyway and then the negate doesn't matter. So it's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of that. Just another very, very nice application here. But moving forward off of this, we have Swordsoul. The deck is pretty similar, but it's pretty different at the same time. I want to talk about a couple things here, because not everyone's going to be on the Halcyon combo. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, this is Auroradon, and then Halqifibrax is a card that they use to get into this, and they do like Despot 1 combo. But if they are on the Halqifibrax build and you see them go things like Auroradon, you always just imperm the Auroradon. If they make the Baron first, then you want to make sure that you hold that imperm. If they don't make Baron first, imperm Auroradon. It's trying to make the combo work where they go the Longwan Catastrophe with the level 10 Synchro, and then they'll do like the Baron as well. So sometimes they need to go Auroradon first. So exactly, like if they have Baron first, hold the imperm for the Baron on your turn so you can trade the negate out. And then if they don't, just hit the Auroradon. Another thing is that it's still proper to Ash the Ashuna. It's just better, especially because the Emergence doesn't search Protoss anymore, so like that's just free. The other thing, do not imperm the Mo-Yi or the Tai until we start seeing Circle come out of the list. Because if Circle is still played, then this is the best way to play around Circle. Because if they summon the Chizao, and then you imperm Chizao, they either circle away their negate, or they just eat the imperm and they keep their negate on the board. Because if you go like imperm on a Mo-Yi, they just summon Shahana and like get Chizao anyway. So it's the better option just to imperm the Chizao, because at that point they lose the search, or they get rid of it, and then they have to go like Shaman and bring it back, and they just like waste a lot of resources. They have to pitch an additional card out of their hand, and then they also are way more susceptible to Nib because of the fact that they reborn it from the graveyard too, and then they're like under the Shaman thing of not being able to use their monsters that were special from the extra deck, so their Baron will be shut off. So very, very nice interaction here. Always just go ahead and imperm on the Chizao. Moving forward though, is we have the Tri-Lyri-DPE. Now, this is the deck that a lot of people wrote off. They said this deck was going to be irrelevant, Bird Up's dead, is gone, It's really not though. Like it just got, I think, top 8 at the PPG. The deck was showing off really nice, and it's hurt right now because they have one recital and they don't have Simorg. But like the end board, I think is still like Appaloosa, Robin, UFD, like Oath and a monster or something like that. And it's like still not bad, and it's still pretty consistent because what the deck is doing now is it's doing tribe combo, and it's using the bird cards to help do tribe combo rather than just going for bird up plays. So you can either do like the bird up board with the deck, or you can do a safe play doing like the Appaloosa, the DDL, a Revolt, and maybe DPE, and then you have the birds for follow-up, which is pretty crazy because the birds still give you a really free Zeus. So I really like this a lot. I think that it's really strong and it's still a really good contender. So I wouldn't be putting the cards down just yet. I would still be ashing that bird call, still really important because of what the card can do for them. Also, you still want to go ahead and imperm that Anaconda. You don't want them to hit the DPE because that's what they added to the deck to compensate for the other losses. So I'd always just hit the Anaconda. It's just easily the best hit for you because DPE is just very annoying to deal with. But if you ever see them just like going full combo, like if they ever like Fractal and Cobalt and they summon Warbler, just go ahead and imperm the Warbler. Like you just don't want this card to go off, especially if you know that the Cobalt's there. You don't want them to get that. So very, very important, especially if you're going first and they like open going second with Warbler, just hit it right away because you don't want to get Zeused. That's just like the last thing that you want to happen, right? So very important, just kind of note there. The next thing up here, though, is going to be Prank Kid. So this is something that you have to be aware of. This is very important, okay? So this is, again, Fateful Adventure. If they go Summon Kid with this up like on the board, and then they make Meow, they can chain block, and they can go Kid 1, Fateful 2, and add Draco back. So Ash can get kind of irrelevant in this matchup at this point, which is unfortunate. But so if they have this, then the Ash just doesn't matter. It never mattered. And at that point, you're probably either just, like, if you see this at the board, you're probably just ashing the Fateful Adventure. If they don't have this, you're ashing the Kid. But if they do, you're definitely hitting this because at least you don't have to deal with the Griffin. So I would kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So it's like you're trading your Ash at least for a negate. So that's how you have to think about hand traps this format. And I feel like that's going to be a really different dynamic, is that hand traps aren't really going to prevent the board as much as make the board easier to crack. So that's pretty much like what we're going for here. The other thing is that if you have Bell, I always preach this, that you should be doing this. Wait for your turn with the Bell. Don't try to hit like the Doodle or anything. Wait for your turn and hit the Bow Wow, because then you can kill their monsters with card effects. Whereas if you didn't hit the Bow, it would protect all of them. So that's pretty scary too, because I've always been in situations, especially playing Striker, where I have like Burner or like Geki or something. I can't use it because I used Bow. But having the Bell for your turn is really strong. And it also gets rid of those resources that they might have wanted back to go ahead and use the Pandemonium Diffuse. So that's really important here. The next thing up is Phantom Knight. Again, going to be a very bread and butter matchup. I'm talking about this away from the Brave Engine because we already talked about how to stop that. We're talking about the in-archetype deck and how to stop that. So basically, you'd want to go ahead and Crow the Scythe if you are playing Crow. If you're playing things like Meister or Bell, they just chain block with a DPE to make sure that their Scythe comes out. So it's very lackluster. You do stop the DPE, but at the same time, they still get the Scythe, right? So you can always imperm the Scythe on summon, or if you have like Chalice, you can Chalice it on summon. But you still have to be very careful of them having a negate on board as well. So that's really just something where you have to really pay attention to that Scythe. I think that Crow has a lot of potential this format. You just really have to watch out and see how the format kind of develops, but I think that it could be seeing some play at least in the sideboard. The next thing is, I feel like you'd always just want to go ahead and Ash this Cloak. It's just another free body on the board. They're going to be able to add that Boots, which is, again, just that free summon that you just don't want them to have. Another free 3. And then lastly, you're always holding that Imperm until the very last moment so you can go ahead and nail that Anaconda. You just don't want them to get that kind of free advantage because that would just not be good for you. And seeing that DPE come out is another way for them to go ahead and pop that Scythe. They probably already have the way to pop it because of the Fogblade in the graveyard to bring back the Breaksword. but at the same time, you deal with one less body, one less interruption, and you put them in having to hard draw the Fusion Destiny, which is always a lot safer of a play. Now, VW is going to be a very interesting matchup. I feel like this one is one of the sleeper decks of the format. I hear a lot of people talking about how this deck isn't going to be that good. I think this deck is actually insane. This deck got second today at the PPG, and it wasn't even running the Brave stuff. It was just like pure VW, and it was scythe locking people. So what it was doing was making the Baron de Fleur and Beatrice, and then sending Scythe in standby phase, going Baron, Reborn, Scythe. And it was so impactful that like it just carried him the entire day, which was just so crazy. So what you'd want to stop here is going to be belling the Lala, of course, the Roshi, being able to get the send and the bring back. Really, really strong. Belling this is huge. You want to Ash the Lulu, not the King Long, again, because if you Ash the King Long, they have Lulu, you're going to get punished. If you imperm the Beatrice, very strong. They could either send Snow, they could send out their Scythe. There's a lot of things that are very impactful here. Yes, they get the effect on the other turn as well, so you just have to keep that in mind, that when you are imperming the Beatrice, that there's two different things you got to worry about, one being a Scythe and one being a Snow. Both very, very scary. The other thing too is if they end up going for the Shen board, you have to know that you have to wait for your own turn to go ahead and imperm that Shen, so you don't have to worry about the mishaps with the banishing, because we all know that effect is really insane. It's really strong. It can really shut you out, so you want to make sure that you are prepared for that as well. This matchup is going to be really crazy because they have a lot of cool end boards that they can do, but just kind of be on top of what all they can do, and watch out for that Scythe Lock, because, you know, that card got left in the game somehow. The last one here that I want to mention is going to be Floowandereeze. I can't just not mention this because they are getting this card here in like 10 days. This right here is going to be their quick play. If you're familiar with Statellar Knight Skybridge, it's very similar. Being able to tag out a bird for another bird. So this card is essentially Circle, right? Like the Tenny Circle. You want to go ahead and just imperm the Empen for the same reason you're imperming the Chizhao. You want them to get rid of their Empen if they want to get another card. Because if you imperm anything else now, they just chain this card. And like, if they do have it, you get punished. If they don't have it, then you get rewarded, right? So this is kind of one of those things where you got to take the gamble. But if you imperm on the Empen, you get rid of the search for the trap. You are also just going ahead and nullifying it for that turn. They don't get the extra summon, so no more barrier statue. There's a lot of very good things that can come from just hitting the Empen alone, which is always very nice here, especially with the spell being a thing. And they usually won't chain it to the Empen because at that point they just will lose it, and this is the best card they have. So that's just something else to really keep in mind, is just waiting and just really having that patience to know when to stop it, because if you hit it right on that Empen, a lot of times they're just not going to get rid of their own Empen, right? Because that would just be insanely hard to get rid of at that point. So without further ado, I hope that you enjoyed the video. There's going to be a part 2. These are just the most relevant interactions that I really wanted to come out with today and really just kind of talk to you about, because with the format kind of shaping up now and really starting to get underway, I want to make sure that you're up to date with the latest interactions, because they're all very important to know. If you're not already familiar with my Twitter, go ahead and follow me on there. I post all the time. On Twitch, I'm live usually. I've been sick lately. I'll be back to my regular schedule very soon. Also, if you want to be a part of my community, go ahead and join my Discord. And lastly, but not least, if you want a coaching session, feel free to go over to my Metafy. Check out the sessions that I offer. And if you want a personalized session, feel free to PM me on Discord and we can talk about what I can do for you instead. We can kind of work out a session. So I hope that you all have a wonderful night. I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.